A ripper challenges me. Excellent. Smoky pink heater. Dead faces flicker in the glass. Heart pounds like this moment is my last stop. 911, I'm dying, can't you see? These demons in my chest are killing me. I'm strung out, lost inside my head, chasing ghosts of the living dead. Can't tell what's real from what's not in this hell that I am caught. Ambulance right through the pouring rain. Droplets turn to demons on the pane. They peel themselves right off the glass. Crawl into my skin as we race past. Laser shooting from the city lights. Cut through me like knives in the night. Via window shows them laughing loud. Hologram people are waiting crowd. Doctor, please don't leave me here alone. Just sleep it off in a skeleton. A month goes by. The cycle starts to activate.
You will suffer its beating. Naughty timekeeper, waiting for eternity to end. His progeny waits too, not forever. I tried to save you, but some things are tight. An anomaly, a catalyst, a vault hunter. Your chaos is the key to locks you cannot see. Take your weapons, if you have the strength to wield them.
So just pause the video as usual as I hover over everything you're about to see on this build. Yeah, I'm on UVH5. I keep forgetting to show that in the video, but I mean, anyone who plays it would know, the numbers and everything look the same. I might show it in the next video just because inevitably I'll have someone say, "No, you're playing on easy or whatever." I'm like, no, it's UVH5. But I mean, honestly, there's not even much. I've noticed there's not much of a difference in the difficulty scaling, I feel like, in this game. I could find a boss on easy, and I still feel like I take roughly the same damage from that boss as I do on UVH5. Anyway, this build, this is a new... I said in a previous video when I showed off the current version of this build and it wasn't done and it was inferior to my melee tank, that is no longer the case. In fact, if anything, this is a superior build now to my melee tank, Onslaught or Eamon, on both damage and tanking now. Now, next week, they already said they're going to confirm, they're going to help melee builds more, so I feel like my melee version is going to get buffed. However, this guy is still outperforming him for boss damage at least, and this guy is missing key buffs to his damage that my melee build just isn't missing. Like my melee build's damage, I don't feel I can get much better anymore compared to this guy, because this guy, he's missing 2 key passives, as you'll see in the specialization tree, because I'm still using my melee specialization. So I want to use the 50% bonus to ordnance damage off your gun damage, and then I also want to use Riddle You This, which increases your gun damage constantly up to a high amount as you just keep firing. I don't know. I assume it applies to ordnance because usually they share each other's, but I'll have to see. If it doesn't, then I won't give up the damage, the 30% damage reduction, which is what I think I'm going to give up, because I still use now with caffeine on this build, and I still want to, because again, as I explained in the last video, I just find I need it because there's too many instances in this game where you're forced into load screens that rip your cooldown away, that reset your skills again. It's so annoying that it doesn't just simply reset the cooldown. Instead, it resets the skill and it goes on cooldown. And for Eamon, this is way more annoying because he has ridiculously long cooldowns. So, as I said, I'm willing to give up a damage passive on specialization tree just to keep now with caffeine. But I still want to maintain my action skill forever because I still think that's still a superior version for a super tank. But this guy, he's able to maintain Scourge forever, so that's a good thing. Also, because of how it works, he taunts enemies, he heals allies, he freezes enemies, and he debuffs them thanks to weakness. So enemies around the field are constantly getting debuffed to where they're always doing less damage to everybody and taking more damage. They're focused on me primarily, and I'm freezing them, and it's not a super amount of healing, but I'm also slightly healing allies too. So this is like the super tank build that finally fights like a proper tank. Like, he draws aggro. I tested it with a couple friends doing bossing too, and it appeared that the boss, as long as I kept it within the radius of the taunt, the boss was only focused on me the entire time. Even when my friends started, like, even when I decided to stop shooting the boss and my friends were shooting him, and also they were DPS builds, they were way more spec for that than me, and the boss was still focused on me. So the taunt definitely appears to work, which makes this guy again into a true tank. And then I can maintain the shield forever. Now, I mentioned how, the damage needs to be increased on this build substantially because I'm missing 2 key passives. Also, I need to get a better ordnance launcher and a better rep kit. Because right now how this works is I can maintain the ammo on my ordnance infinitely while it's out. The problem is, in order to maintain my shield duration forever, I have to use a rep kit. And using a rep kit takes you out of the ordnance launcher and resets its cooldown depending on where your ammo is at the time. A lot of times it has no cooldown because my ammo is already completely maxed out, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's even low as like half, and then I have to wait like 10 seconds or more sometimes, which then just forces me to use other weapons, which can be annoying. But also, I feel like the weapons I'm using on this build are very good. We're using, or whatever it's called, I found some roll for an assault rifle that has 10,000 DPS, you saw. And it actually shreds for this kind of tank build, at least. When you're running like pure tanks, all I care about is just raw damage numbers, not like crits or combos or anything like that stacks together. Just show me the raw DPS value on a gun. And whatever has the highest DPS value I found is always the best gun to use on these tank builds I made. And this one had a raw flat 10,000 DPS, which is super high on that assault rifle. And you can tell, like, it actually keeps up with alts on gun, like secondary values on guns. It does so much damage. And then I finally found my 3rd beam tosser. So yeah, I just have that gun with 3 beam toss shotguns that I just switched to just, spam beam shots that do crazy amounts of damage and get buffed by my gun damage buffs, including when I aim down sights. It applies to the beam tosses too. I tested that, so that's why you see me aim down my sights against the boss when using them, because I realized, it's going to do even more damage if I do that. But aiming down sights not only boosts my damage, but it helps me maintain the invincibility of my shield, because I don't want my vengeance meter to actually build up. When my vengeance meter builds up, it actually gets annoying because I start taking damage. But also what I hate, I hope they change this, is the stupid animation on the shield changes and I can't see anything. Like, I don't know why they can't just simply change it to where it just glows red, maybe, so it alerts you to it that way, but without hampering your freaking vision, and that's what it does right now. It's so aggravating. I have to remember just to use my Forge Wave once, and this build is not really Forge Wave based. Instead, I build ordnance damage for 2 reasons: to help my infinite launcher whenever I can use it. Also, the pulse I send out. That was the other thing. Like, I taunt enemies, I apply weakness, freeze, I heal allies, but also I slowly damage them over time, and it honestly builds up. I've noticed, like, at least fodder enemies, basic fodder enemies, so a lot of them sometimes will just die before I even get a chance to shoot them because of the amount of damage stacking my pulse alone is doing to them. And of course, that's only going to get better when I help my passives on it. But yeah, I want to get a rep kit though with Go-Go Gadget. It needs to be the same like cooldown, the same fact that it has multiple charges so it can maintain my my shield forever like I do on this build. But I want it to have Go-Go Gadget because that will ensure that every time I take away my ordnance to use a rep kit to maintain my shield, I'm halving the cooldown of my ordnance. So if I did happen to be at like a lower mag count where it was like it was like half my mag count, rather than 10 seconds I have to wait, it'll only be like 5, for instance. So it still will feel like most of the time that way. It just feels like you really are able to use it infinitely at that point. And then whenever I get that, I'll probably just get a 4th beam toss gun, honestly, because it's like, why not? If I ever have an instance where I have to wait a little long for my ordnance launcher again to justify using my primary guns, then I might as well just make them all maxed out damage alts, because I'm most of the time never going to be using them, so most of the time they should always be at charge anyway. And so I can just spam them all and still do crazy amounts of damage before I can use my ordnance launcher again, because it should never take long to get my ordnance launcher back once I get Go-Go Gadget going. The other thing is my ordnance launcher itself. I used it on my melee build, that's why it has real big fists. So I'm missing a firmware. I need to get I need to get a better version, which exists. Right now I'm using fire rate and extended mag, and that provides a 20,000 DPS buff, which is higher than most ordnance launchers will have at level 50. So my roll is already a good one. It's hard to find something better. It's going to take time, but I know there are rolls out there that are better. If I don't find an identical one to slap at least the right firmware I want, I'll probably get God Killer, because it's like, why not? I don't want to get the 3rd Gadget Ahoy one, because I don't like relying on kills. That won't even help me in the boss fight here. Like, it wouldn't even help my damage in boss fights here. So I'd rather just get something that just further adds to my raw damage numbers, basically, at all times. So maybe get the 5% fire rate from bullets, bullet swarm, or get God Killer, so at least always in mobbing I deal another little chunk of damage against bad arse enemies so that they die quicker to my launcher. So I might do that whenever I get it. But key critical thing, that's why I said I'm still missing a good amount of damage, not just from my passives providing a good damage bonus I see in the future, but my ordnance launcher itself needs to be better, because I can get that same rocket launcher without extended mag, get like 2-shot, for instance, which will, I think, both increase the damage and make it even easier to maintain the ammo on it, because then 2 shots, every single shot will have a chance of a status to, restore my ammo and my shield. So that'll massively increase the damage. Now, on that note, how did I figure out, compared to my last video on this build, to make this guy truly invincible finally? The shield was always part of the formula, because the shield, especially when it's infinite, you take no damage, period. You literally have invulnerability basically on you from the front, and when your vengeance meter is not completely full, which for me is I try to make sure is most of the time. That's another reason to use the taunt augment and aim down sights, to boost your damage on guns, but then also to ensure your vengeance meter is not filling up that often, so that you always have invincibility mode on your shield. But another thing is, I noticed because I don't have the amount of crazy armor or shield regen as my melee onslaughter does, so I can't heal my shield nearly as quickly, and I was running into issues you saw in my previous video on this build, where I was doing these same kind of fights, but constantly having my armor break. Even if I was using Onion, it wasn't really helping. or a big shield like this, although I think now a big shield like this is a superior to onion. I explained why in the melee build, but the same rule applies here, as I'll explain. So, yeah, I was noticing I was just going down. I didn't go down, but I was just getting close to going down a lot because I was taking flank damage that was just breaking my onion shield or my energy shield, tested on each one constantly. And I just didn't have enough regen to maintain it, so that I wasn't always, fighting with low health. Even though I was still able to survive for the most part, it still was it was not nearly as tanky as this, obviously. And why, once again, is because I realized once I got the right class mod, it's like, let's get my skill tree down to where I get the application chance to ammo and shield regen. So now, every time I apply a status, there's a 1 in 4 chance that it not only refills my ammo for ordnance launcher, but it gives me 15% shield. And that's and remember, that is percentage based. Just like Onslaughter has percentage based regen of 15%. So this means that the more shield you stack, the more you're gonna get back from it. And as a result, from what I've seen, you see, I am pretty much immortal. In fact, I got rid of the thrill, actually. After doing testing, I realized I don't need I don't need health regen period on this build anymore, because it never happens anymore. My Onslaughter will sometimes happen because he doesn't have he doesn't have total invulnerability phases as much as this guy does. But if you go into back high, for instance, that boss, he will rip my armor and bring me down to low health with 1 EQ or any of those bat swarms. Some boss fights, you just take a massive amount of damage all at once that will always break your shield or armor and take you down to a low health bar no matter what, which is why I still use the thrill on my Onslaughter melee tank, because that will happen to him. But with the thrill, and as long as I'm, mobile at least, he still feels like he can face tank even back hive bosses like that for the most part. With big gigantic hits like that, he can still face tank them. This guy, he is completely invincible even against that. I go into back hive, he can charge right into me, do an EQ right in front of me, and it's never going to do anything because of Scourge. Because I have an invulnerability from Scourge, and I'm constantly ensuring my vengeance meter is not filled up, so I always have the invulnerability, and I always have the action skill up forever. I always have the shield up forever too. So it's just, he is completely invincible. And then when he does take flank damage, the best part is that the taunt pulse helps his durability even more because of that. Because if I'm in a mob of enemies, that aggro pulse that activates, it still will apply status on all those enemies constantly. And because of that, not only does it help further refill my launcher if I'm not hitting an enemy directly, it also is constantly regenning my giant shield bar with a percentage, so it's a giant amount of healing too, a giant amount of energy restoration from all the enemies, outflanking me too, so that I still remain completely invincible. And gain overshield too, a little bit at least. So it's just crazy. And then you take me into a boss fight, because you may think, well, yeah, but what about when you're fighting maybe a lone super strong boss, and so that cryo pulse isn't restoring your shield as much? Well, that's not a big deal, because one, that means I can usually just keep my shield facing that boss constantly, so I'm always in invincibility phase. But I've had moments where I tested it too, where it's I'll turn my back or whatever, and I'll still feel, probably not as tanky as my melee dude would when I don't have the shield advantage, but I'll still be able to restore my shield an insane amount because of the ordnance launcher. When I'm focused on a boss, as you see here, that's when my ordnance launcher, is at its best, because I can just target. And most bosses are pretty easy, fairly easy to, keep hitting too. And as long as I keep hitting him with my ordnance launcher over and over and over again to get the ammo back, well, again, it's constantly giving my shield restoration back. So whenever I'm focused on an enemy with a rapid fire gun, that actually is always restoring my shield on that percentage based a crazy amount too, because it's constantly applying cryo to them thanks to having Scourge active. So, yep, even against bosses or mobs, my shield regen now, thanks to that same skill node, is also sky high, and it's another reason where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to use this turtle high capacity energy shield, because the more shield I have, the more I'm getting back from it too, which makes him next to immortal even if I'm taking damage through my shield. But then I'm still able to have the infinite shield, so the infinite invulnerability from the front too. So, yeah. You compare this to my melee tank, and this build's actually better, finally. Like, he clears mobs almost just as quick as my melee does, but then he also kills bosses quicker than him, and he's even tankier, and he helps his team. So this is actually officially a superior build to my melee onslaughter version of it. I still love that build. It's still a great build. It's still a very fun build. And again, next week, that build I think is going to get a buff. So we'll have to see. I even hope now they do, so that because I love using both these builds. So the fact that this build, I can tell, is outperforming and will further outperform when I complete its specialization passives and gear. It will further outperform the melee build. That's all the more reason why I'm glad that they're going to buff melee damage, so that I can still continue justifying using the melee version. I hate that I have to always pay to respec though, although it's easy to maintain cash, but I'm thinking, once I can get duplicate gear for both of these builds, then I might just start a second Aemon and level them up to 15 UVH5 again, just so that I can have one Aemon with the red tree Onslaughter build and another Aemon with the blue tree Scourge build, because I love both of them now.